are listening to Talking Hoosier Baseball,
a podcast
by fans from the IUBase.com website.
For anyone wanting more information on the Indiana University baseball program.
To see my baby in her
Well, hello. We are now having an interview here with John Bauer, the Director of Events at Indiana University Athletics. He's been doing that since 2012. John, good to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
He's currently overseeing game day operation for men and women's soccer, men and women's swimming and diving, as well as baseball. He also assists with football and men's basketball. He used to have interaction with field hockey and water polo in the past. Background, he's got a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from the University of Illinois Champaign and a Master's of Education in Sports Administration from Southern Illinois University Carbondale. It was rather interesting because John sent us a list of a lot of the different points in his background, which is very, very diverse, from engineering work, a year as a high school science teacher, which was pretty cool. 12 years as a high school football official, and 6 years as a USA track and field official. And I have to ask about this. You got hit in the head by a hammer?
Well, okay, so it was actually the indoor hammer, which is called the weight throw. And we were running a little bit behind, and so I was the clerk, but I was also assisting with judging the ring. And I was behind a net that I thought would protect me. So I was, you're always supposed to have both eyes on that implement. But I was trying to catch us up. So I was getting the order down on the clipboard so we could go right into finals and try to speed things along. And we were down to, I don't know if it was the last thrower of the prelims or anyway, that kid won the Division III national championship that year. So that gives you an idea how hard he was throwing that. What it is a 35-pound rubber ball on a triangular shaped handle, and they spin around and they let go and see how far they can throw it. Well, the net stopped that he released it about a quarter turn too soon. The net stopped it at 5 feet, and I was standing at 4 feet, and it took me out, and I had to go to the hospital. And when I was, on the ambulance, and so, I knew things were wrong because when I was looking at my clipboard, next thing I know, I'm on the ground. Two guys are on top of me telling me not to move. And I really had no idea why I was on the ground. And then I couldn't see out of my left eye. And my right eye, I was laying in such a way that my right eye was towards the ground. So all I could see was kind of the ground. And then you see somebody on the football field get hurt and they're laying there and they're just kind of involuntarily kicking their legs. Well, I was doing that. So I knew in my brain, I said, man, something's not right here. And then finally they brought me up to speed, said, hey, this is what's going on. And they kept saying, do you want us to call your wife? And I said, no, I just, I had a little bit of blood and I thought, no, I just need to go to the hospital and get some stitches and I'll be all right. I don't want to scare her because she was at home. We had that happened in, I think, January, February, and we had our daughter was born in October, so she had a really young one at home plus two other rambunctious kids, and so I didn't want to worry her. And they asked me that a couple times, and then finally, when I was in the ambulance, they came in and they said, "Hey, you sure you don't want us to call your wife?" And I said, "No, I'll be all right. I just get some stitches, we'll be fine." And the paramedic looked at me and said, "Dude, you're messed up. Call her." So they called her, and I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I'm giving you morphine right now. That's how messed up you are. So let them call your wife." So they called her and met her at the hospital, and I was kind of going. I wouldn't say I was losing consciousness, but I was just kind of zooming in and out as far as kind of being sleepy. And when I was in the emergency room, I woke up and they were talking to my wife, and they said, well, we're getting ready to put him into CAT scan to see if he's stable enough to go by ambulance or if he needs to be life flighted, because we're pretty sure his left eye is ruptured, and he's probably going to have some permanent brain damage, and all that. And so it was a crazy deal. And they I came out of the CAT scan, and they're like, oh, well, he's fine. As soon as we get this and this done, then we'll release him. And so I was very fortunate, very blessed that I did not receive more severe injury. I did have some broken bones in my face that I had to have surgery to get kind of repaired, but I, as far as I know, I had no lasting effects from that. Now you ask my friends, they may tell you different, but no. So no, it was one of those things. And then it was one of those deals where, I was afraid not to go back to work. And so I went back to work too soon because I didn't really realize kind of how bad I looked. And I went back to work within like a week, and like people were really grossed out by that. And finally my boss is like, maybe you shouldn't come back for a while. And so, and that's where, I work in athletics, and I've always had that mindset. And it's like, hey, we want to get back to the field. We want to get back out as quickly as we can. And that was one of those situations where I probably came back too soon, not for my, it didn't bother me, but to bother other people. So anyway, that's my fun little story.
Okay. John has been the championship director for 20 different events at IU, including the 2 baseball regionals in 2013 and 2014, and the 2017 Big Ten baseball tournament. We also know that he was he's been somewhat famous locally. You might recognize his face as the man who drove Bob Knight into the BART last year. So if you could just kind of walk us through a little bit about when things are not when things are more normal, what your role is, what is in director of events, how does your role, what do you do on a daily basis?
Sure. I think the easiest way to understand what I do is I'm kind of an air traffic controller of an athletic event. So I don't load the planes, I don't fix the planes, I don't fuel the planes, I don't serve the drinks on the planes or fly the plane, but I make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. And then if there's a problem, an event, whether it's a weather event or, an injury or something, then I'm the one that is to keep the calm and provide direction and get everybody through that event. And so, or that incident. And so that takes a lot of planning ahead of time. There's a lot of pre-planning, a lot of pre-communication where you're making sure that everybody knows, hey, I'm supposed to be here then, I'm supposed to be here then, I've got this group coming. So making sure that we're all on the same page, we all know what to expect. I do a lot of communication with visiting team umpires, making sure that making sure that they're taken care of for all of my sports, and specifically for football, I'm the visiting team liaison. So my primary job is to reach out to the visiting team and make sure that everything from their lowest equipment manager to their athletic director to even maybe the president of the university that may be coming, to make sure that they have everything that they need. So I put together visiting team guides that it's a very comprehensive manual that tells about the Bloomington area, everything they need to know from their trip, from what gate to enter to where to park to all of that. And then so with football, when the football team, Big Ten football teams travel with a 53-foot semi trailer. That's how much equipment they bring. Basically, they bring everything they need to have a home away from home. And so that truck usually arrives sometime early Friday morning. I meet them, get the truck in, get it settled. And then I'm with them anytime they're in our stadium. I'm with them just to make sure that if anything they need, I'm taking care of them. And then, I help arrange police escort, bomb sweeps for visiting team. And so then I meet their buses on game day, get them in through the parking lot and down into the area. And then I escort their staff up and down to the press box, that sort of thing. I'm coordinating with their athletic director, staff, if they're coming, to make sure that everything they need is taken care of. And I'm putting them in place in contact with the right people, that sort of thing. So that's on the large scale of football. And then, on the smaller sports, baseball team, they're much more self-sufficient. But again, I'm helping them arrange meals. They'll call, say, hey, who do you recommend for this? And so, I'm there to take care of that, and just basically make sure that everything runs smoothly. And if I've done my job right, you guys don't notice me. Nobody, you don't notice that I'm there, and hopefully everything goes smoothly. But if there's that event, the incident that whatever might happen, somebody gets hit with a ball, there's weather. Nobody likes to, when it's bad weather, nobody likes to see me come out of the press box, because what's coming, and I've got to be the bad guy. Fun story on that, with the Maryland game, was it Lamonis's last year? I think we needed to sweep them, and we were down some runs. We got bases loaded in a downpour, and DeDelo hits the grand slam walk-off home run. Well, it wasn't a walk-off at that point, but lightning was coming, and I was on my way down, and it wasn't in our drop dead where we've got to pull the game, but it was close. And Roger met me at the third base gate, and he's like begging me. He's like, we've got 2 outs. Let DeDelo hit this ball, and then you can call it. And I'm like, well, Roger, I can hold it as long as I can, but once we get to that, that designated point, I've got to get him off the field regardless. And he's just like, please just hold him. And then it was 2 pitches later, and he hits the grand slam, and I'm literally following him from third base to home. And then Cam Gelosi starts the fight with the Maryland bench, and I'm trying to get a hold of an umpire to say, hey, we've got to stop this. And I won't mention the umpire's name, but I got a hold of him, and I said, hey, we got to pull him off the field. And he looks at me and he says, over my dead body, not after what just happened. Fortunately, the Maryland head coach heard that. He heard that conversation, and he's like, no, we'll go off. We need to do what's safe for everybody. And so then, the real fear is something that we didn't tell anybody. There were still 2 outs in that inning. If we didn't finish that inning, it didn't count. Yep. So we would have gone from being ahead to the loss, and his walk-off or his grand slam didn't count. So, we were just trying to find a way, can we get this? Because they also had a travel deadline. So, it's like, what can we do to get this clear? And fortunately, the weather cleared. Maryland got it, we got that out, and then Maryland got another at bat, and all was well.
John, would you want to talk about the difference between Simbauer to the Bart, since you've been around for?
Yeah. So, and this, I'll just say this out to the Arizona State fans. Don't give up on Tracy Smith, because that man can coach and he can recruit, because he recruited nobody. I don't think anybody really remembers this, but he recruited Kyle Schwarber and Sam Travis and, that all of those. I'm forgetting the name of our third baseman, DeMuth. He recruited all of those guys to Simbauer Field, and there's not one piece of dirt had been moved yet to start the construction of Bart Kaufman Field when those guys agreed to come. And so that field, high school fields were better than that field. There was no bathroom in the dugouts, no parking for fans, nothing indoor, no locker rooms. The players had to use the same bathroom that the fans used. Nothing in the press box. There were times where I would have to take over stat crew for our SID so he could run down and go to the restroom between innings. And if you remember, the only parking was in a grass field that was on about a 45-degree embankment, and it was just it was not. I'm just still baffled at how we were able to build those College World Series teams on that Simbauer field. And so, all of that credit goes to Tracy Smith for what he was able to do. I mean, Josh Fagley played on that and never even had the promise of Bart Kaufman Field. So, to the Arizona State fans, don't give up on Tracy Smith because he'll get the job done for you. You just gotta give him some time. So, but yeah, that's I don't have any fun Simbauer stories other than there's a couple times where I just sat and watched it rain for 2 or 3 hours as we were hoping that it would stop and we could get the game in, and we just couldn't because that field it was not going to happen. So I'm glad for the turf. I love grass fields, but as much rain as we get in the springtime, it's the turf. You just can't be without it. So.
And that was a big part of what you had to work through in that 2017 Big Ten tournament was all the rain.
Right. We would have okay. So a couple fun stories with that. So we, everything was prepared and we knew some rain was going to come. So I had actually prearranged with Indiana State and Butler to use their fields if we needed to in case we got into a rain situation. Because worst case scenario is you lose a whole day and then you can't you've got to modify the tournament and you're not going to be able to finish it as it is. So, so we get out there and of course it's been raining all morning, not a heavy rain, but raining. And Coach Anderson just did not want to play. He did not want to play. He's old school and Coach Anderson from Minnesota, and he's like, you don't start baseball games in the rain. And I'm like, Coach, I understand that, but if we don't play your game today, we're going to lose the whole day. There's no way we're going to be able to get any game in today if we don't play the first one. And he just wasn't budging. And then finally, I'm like, Coach, here's the deal: if we don't play today, then you're going to have to play. You're going to have to get on the bus and go an hour tomorrow and play at an off-site facility an hour away, and then as soon as that game's over, come back and play a second game on third. So you're going to play a doubleheader with 2 hours of travel in that in order to be able to get it. And that's kind of finally what got him to budge. And then so we got those games. We got the first 2 games in, and then the rain had actually subsided. But we saw a big burst of rain that was going to come, and so for in the afternoon, and so we talked about it, because we didn't want to burn anybody's pitcher, especially on the first day. So we talked about it and finally decided that what we should do, because there's a chance this big burst of rain is going to come. So we put an hour postponement for Game 3, and then we sat and watched the sunshine for an hour and a half. But by that time we'd already made that decision, and so one of the things that I learned, and that's one thing on my job, I'm always trying to learn something. And one thing we learned, especially in tournament play, is you never change the schedule based on what you think the weather's going to do. Because the weather is especially in springtime in Indiana, the weather is always going to change. And so in that situation, what we should have done is just played that in. And then we probably would have been able to get that nightcap game in, that fourth game, which we were not able to do, which I really believe that cost Northwestern the tournament, because Northwestern was on fire that weekend. And what all that did is that pushed delays, forced them into a couple double headers late, and also a double header in the championship game day. And I think that just burned their pitching. Where had we gone through to where Northwestern would have just been able to play one game a day as the tournament was set up, I think Northwestern would have won that tournament that year.
So what's your go-to app for weather?
So, well, they're kind of changing a little bit because some companies have bought them out. We as a university, we subscribe to a system. It's called Weather DTN. It's DTN, Weather DTN, something like that. It's by Snyder Electric. It's a pay site. Gives you real-time lightning forecasts and that sort of thing, and allows us to set distances out. So I like to use that for the lightning detection. But I don't necessarily like their weather forecasting as much. So I use Weather Underground as an app that I've used since my grad school days. But Weather Underground just got bought out. I think their hourly forecasting is a lot more accurate. But they just got bought out, so I'm not sure if I'm going to stay with them or not. There's also an app that I really like. It's called lightningmaps.org, and it's free. But you can get real-time lightning strikes from that as well, where most of the time, if you're going to get lightning strikes, everybody's making you pay for that. So if you ever wander into the press box on a day when we've got weather coming, you'll see I've got probably 2 computers set up so I'm running my Weather Underground, my Weather DTN. I've generally also got the National Weather Service up, and then I've got my lightning maps, and I'm just watching all of that to try to guess what the weather's going to do. And sometimes I'm trying to just will that weather to hit that Bloomington bubble and go in either direction. Because there have been times where we've had to suspend play because the lightning got inside the prescribed distance, but it was sunshine where we were. So, and that really makes fans mad when you do that. But the one thing that the National Weather Service has really stressed is you can get a lightning. It's called blue sky strike. You can get a lightning strike from as far as 10 miles away, and you could have blue skies and still get that lightning strike. So that's something we never want to mess with somebody's life. We always want to take safety, and that's something I have a hard time remembering. Is it ultimately is about safety, and if we bent the rules and somebody got hurt, that you can never go back from that. So it's, anytime we change and even for this virus, anytime we change, it's always about, we're trying to keep you safe. We want the games to go on as much as anybody. And I'll say on that too, I know the frustrations, especially in Coach Lamonis's last year, there was a lot of frustrations because a lot of game times changed. But what people don't necessarily understand is in college baseball, you have a short window to play your 56 games, and there isn't the time or the budget to go back and make up games. Major League Baseball, they can pull a game and then come back when they come back around, play a doubleheader, and that. But they have budgets and they have time, whereas these guys, they have to be in class. The travel is very expensive, so we move games around in order to give us the best chance to get all the games in, and then we also try to wait as long as possible. So, because the weather changes, and I mean, you don't want to be wrong, because I can think of 2 different times where we've canceled a game and then had the best weather. A soccer game was one, and then a baseball game where we canceled, and then that was the best weather day of the weekend. So sometimes, most of the time we're right, but sometimes we're wrong, and we try to limit that, which is why I'll have the Bauer weather station up and operating during all that, trying to figure all that out. So anyway,
Can you speak to the because I've read and I've seen little hints about the temperature, the absolute rules on temperature, at what point it is too cold by various rules in order to play. Can you speak to that?
Sure. The Big Ten Conference adopted a policy for both baseball and softball, and the policy is that if the real, and they had to pick an app so that that would be uniform to everybody. So they said if the real field temperature by AccuWeather is less than 28 degrees, then you cannot play. You can't start. We'll put it that way. You can't do any warm ups. You can't start anything unless the AccuWeather predicts that the real field temperature will reach 28. And then if it's not 28, but it says it's going to be 28 within the hour, then you can start warm ups, and then once it hit you, but you can't start till it hits 28. Now, once you've started the game, once that real feel has reached that 28 degrees, and both schools still agree to play, then right now there's no language that says you have to stop if the temperature drops back below the 28. So right now we've interpreted that as long as the real feel on AccuWeather is 28 or warmer, then we can play the game and get it going. But most of the time, and you saw that last weekend with San Diego, if we're going to be close to that, we're probably not going to play unless we have to, just because baseball's different than soccer or football, where you're constantly moving and constantly staying warm. Baseball, there's a lot of standing. And when you're standing and it's cold, your body gets cold, and then all of a sudden you have to do a real quick short burst of like 100% exertion. That's a prescription for getting hurt.
Well, those of us who've done it a lot, we've kind of figured out how to stay warm, but also, we can layer up a lot more than a ball player can. And,
That's true.
And I'm sure San Diego was not looking forward to that Friday night.
No,
they're not used to that.
But they were pretty good humored about it. They were pretty good spirits about it. So.
And it got a little chilly there the second game of the doubleheader. So I tip my hat to San Diego for sticking with it as long as they did. So.
And for even agreeing to come.
Yeah.
Go to Indiana in March, come to Indiana in July. But,
yeah. And they were here the whole week too, because they played in Terre Haute midweek.
Yes. Yeah.
Was that with their spring break? Was that what was going on?
That's what I've heard. I never got the definitive answer
Okay.
on that, but that was the rumor that I had heard, is that was their spring break trip. So
here, come play at San Diego, where you'll get a great spring break trip to Southern Indiana.
Yeah. Well, but it could have been 60. And that's the thing. You don't like the weather in Indiana, wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
Well, same time of year a few years ago, that Fullerton series was absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
I think that's all we've got. Thank you very much, John. That was very interesting.
All right. Well, glad to do it anytime. And, it'll be fun to come back and do this next year. And hopefully, as a fan, again, not speaking as an athletic department person, but as a fan, I would like to see the NCAA maybe expand the number of games that teams can play in the fall.
Yes.
I have not heard anything that says that they're even considering it, or that even if coaches would even want to do that. But I'm sure itching for college baseball already, and so hopefully it'll be back around soon enough, and it'll be fun to see everybody out there again.